Do you want to tether your life to Google? Obviously, all of you will say, no, you don't want that. Yet, most of you, and I mean 99% of you, are in fact tethering your life and your life's data to Google. And Apple too, but I'll focus on Google here in this video. And so without understanding the implication of this, you are in effect giving information about every move, from searching, from visiting websites, from doing things on apps, from using Gmail, from using Google Maps, from using the internet in general, to Google. And this is all tied to a specific identifier, which is your Google login, and this is also your Gmail account. Practically everyone in the world has a Google login. And the amount of information about you and your Google login is incredible. So today I want you to understand what this implies and how this affects your freedom and why this is going on even if you're not logged into a Google platform at this moment, like YouTube or Gmail. You need to understand what Google knows. You need to understand the implications of Google knowing about you. And then you need to learn a solution so that Google loses this knowledge, or at least misunderstands what it knows. Stay tuned to strategize if you want to not tether your life to Google. First of all, what is the consequence of Google knowing about your life and all our lives? I know the typical comment, well, my life is not that interesting, so I don't care. Unfortunately, this kind of response will sink us all, because it is not even important that Google knows about you as an individual. What we have to understand is that Google knows about the entire population. Google knows what your thoughts are, your political views, your hot button topics, your triggers, your financial status, your religious views, your health even. Google has created subgroups of people in the world based on these criteria, which it calls cohorts. And the result is that they have a worldwide map of people identified to precise locations with specific beliefs and identified by their Google ID. For example, in another video, I showed a map in Texas where Google has identified all the people who are anti-vax, down to each precise location, obviously curated from their Google ID. Now, if you think this is a benign action, think again. Google uses this cohort data to try to influence targeted people, and it tries to target you by attempting to change what you see on the internet. What exactly is the purpose of knowing this much detail about everyone? The more naive among you think this is all about marketing, that they use it to sell products. But it has gone beyond that. Through specialized divisions in Alphabet, they have moved to the next target, which is to influence you with ideas. And the ideas are whatever Google wants to push. And it is clear that they are winning. Certain issues are amplified in search and social media. The rest of you complain that your preferred issues are repressed. The young generation is already trained to think that the Google way is good. From elementary school on, for example, people are trained that privacy is unimportant. All school activity goes through Google products and tracked from childhood. Google can filter content and block it from your view. They can affect search results to favor views that will try to influence you. They can censor exchanges in social media platforms. Allowing Google to know everything about what we think gives them the ability to target the population. Every time there's an election, you ought to ask if this is a fair fight. Yet the entire problem is that Google's power comes from all of you and your choices. You think you are free to choose, free to vote, but you have no idea about the guiding hand that guides the many that don't resist. They, meaning big tech, have control. Much of this control comes from the Google ID on the Google front. First of all, it is practically impossible nowadays to do anything on the internet without having to connect yourself to some Google property using your Google ID. To start with, let's start with the most obvious, the Google Android. Isn't it entirely obvious that the phone has your Google ID? You set it up when you got it. It establishes your account with the Google Play Store. But more than that, any interaction on your device is known to Google. If you go to Instagram, Google knows that. If you click on some page on Instagram, Google knows that. If you visit a news site, Google knows that. In fact, Google knows specifically even what page you are on and which article. This is from something called Google Analytics, which is on practically every website and web platform. Google Analytics is tracking your clicks for the search engine, but it also knows you by your Google ID. So instead of just thinking of some platform tracking who clicks on its website, Google also does the reverse and tracks the individual to see what the individual clicks on. Your interests, your preferences, your actions are all recorded. The detail to this is incredible. And on top of your every tap on your phone, they have a constant read on your exact location. And in a way, you cannot turn off if you're on a Google Android. On your phone, there is a telemetry tracking using Google Firebase. This is precise enough to know every time you go to an app and how much time you are on each app. Again, tracked by Google ID. Every browser request is not only known to Google via Google Analytics, but there is a feature on your phone called Safety Net, safe browsing. The idea is that the URL of your internet destination is passed to Google Safety Net, where Google can choose to block malware and dangerous sites. But this is a choke point because Google can lock out ideas it deems to be dissenting and not allow debate. In addition to Safety Net, Google now controls DNS requests since all Androids now default to Google Private DNS. So practically all Android traffic now goes to Google for internet name resolution. This means Google can block any domain it chooses. There are more ways, so this is just an example. And the innocent user has no idea that the information he's receiving may be curated. Your search activity is completely recorded as well and tied to a Google ID, and this is even independent of the device, since Siri, Chrome, and your computer or Safari on your Mac would naturally use Google. When you use Gmail, Google reads your conversations and uses this to profile you, not just for pushing products, but to identify where you stand in your belief system. Then many of you feel you need to provide more information by putting your documents in Google Docs. And of course, you feel that this is not enough, so you dump all your photos into Google Photos and your files into Google Drive so that Google can harvest even more information. And in fact, they will have matched your mobile device to whatever computer you've been using two-factor authentication with your Google app on the Android or iPhone. Full matching of all devices using a technique called cross-device tracking. And then sharing that information so that even if you're on a computer with blocked locations, your location is known on the phone. I have to describe the almost complete control of Google on our personal information because without this baseline, no one seems to care. Now, Google just bought Fitbit, and soon your Fitbit use, meaning your health data, will now also be part of the Google collection. This sounds really dire, right? And you might feel a sense of hopelessness, and then you give in and you just say you have no control and accept what is. I'm here to tell you that, of course, there is control, but you have to make choices and you have to care. Until a sufficient number of the population resists this, we will not gain our freedom back, and this loss will be forever. I have analyzed the Google problem for a very long time and have realized that it can be beaten. But to do that, we need to understand the constituent parts of the Google data collection process. First, there's the raw data of your action, a Google search, a website click, a YouTube video watched, a Gmail email sent. Then there's the identifier, and that's the Google ID, or really the Gmail account associated with the Google ID. Now here's an interesting element. Without the Google ID, the information collected is pretty much meaningless. The data mining algorithms have to throw it away. The data is only important as a pair, data plus identity. This is such an important element in what I teach in my channel. You have two approaches to privacy: eliminate the data or eliminate the identity. Either will invalidate the data set. So leaking data all day is meaningless without identity. Similarly, an identity without any activity is unimportant as well. Now, there are variations to this concept, such as creating alternate identities and alternate data, but we'll stick to the basics for now. One of the biggest problems in privacy is on mobile. There is no way to disassociate a Google ID from mobile if you're using a standard normie mobile device. I include iPhone in this and I explain it in other videos. But basically, there's an identifier on all phones that proxies for the Google ID. There are many, so I'll just call it the serial number. Once that match is made, then the phone will identify itself at all times. At the moment, the only phones that are immune from a Google ID are specialty privacy phones like a de-Googled phone. Examples are my Brax 2 privacy phone, or ones running on alternate OSs based on Android AOSP, such as Lineage OS, Calyx, Graphene, or others. There are also Linux phones, though not as user-friendly at this time. The unique thing about using these privacy phones as an alternative mobile device is that there is absolutely no Google ID. In fact, no Google app has permission to even see any of the serial numbers. So on mobile, this solution has no equal. Let me re-explain what happens. It doesn't even matter if your mobile device leaks data because no one knows the Google ID. Thus, as I said earlier, the data has to be thrown away because it is not a complete set of data plus identity. On a computer, let's say when using a browser, you are not obligated to log in to Google to use some services. You're able to watch YouTube without logging in. You're also able to, in theory, go to other websites without passing your Google ID if you're not logged in to Google on that browser. I say in theory because Google can identify that you're on the same browser or that the browser has logged in with a particular Google ID in the past. This is easy enough to verify. If you have multiple Google IDs and you log out, you will be offered the option of logging in by selecting from your list of Google IDs. Obviously, the browser knows the Google IDs you've used on it, even if you're logged out. A computer can be made very safe even with a Google ID. I've talked about this in other videos, and it is the browser isolation strategy. I'll re-explain briefly. Since most of you will need to use Google for something, be it Gmail, YouTube, Google Earth, or Google Search, then we need to consolidate all your Google activities in one browser. I would use Chrome, so this would be the browser dedicated to Google activities while logged in. What's important here is that all non-Google activity never be done on this browser. Dedicate a second browser for going to Amazon, eBay, news sites, Rumble, and so on. Now, what is the purpose of this? Since the second browser, let's say it's Firefox, has no Google login ever, then the Google Analytics and all the websites cannot track your click with a Google ID. You basically remove the identity part of the tracking in non-Google properties. You can extend this with a third browser. You can dedicate a third browser to doing things Google without a login. For example, you can watch YouTube anonymously. An example of a third browser to use is Brave. So the value of this procedure is that we have basically corralled the ability of Google to match the Google ID on a computer to your data. If you're using the browser isolation strategy I just talked about, then you've eliminated the collection of identity on a computer if it is not a Google platform. Once you've eliminated the identity, the data is meaningless. So the next problem is how to limit the data collected on a Google platform, and not necessarily just eliminate it, but making the data information invalid. Well, the easy thing to do is to start limiting your reliance on Google. Change your search engine. You can use alternate search engines like Startpage, DuckDuckGo, and so on. Of course, sites like Yahoo and Bing will still track your search activities, but these sites do not control the entire internet like Google, so their effect on you is minimal. You must concentrate on Google. As I already said, the Google search is heavily manipulated based on your personal profile. During the 2016 election, searching Hillary Clinton yields different results depending on your political position. So this is not really a free search, it is controlled search. Some of you use alternate sites like Rumble for politically focused videos. That's fine, but it always has to be in conjunction with a browser isolation strategy. Using Gmail for important communications has to be eliminated. You can use Gmail for nonsense like login validations, but it should never be used in a context where Google can profile you with your email content. So you should use a different paid email service for serious email or email with family. I have a Brax mail product you can check out. It's a paid subscription that gives you 5 different domains you can use simultaneously. So keeping Gmail for junk mail is of course a good thing. Let them pay for the cost. I would definitely avoid using Google Docs, Google Drive, and Google Photos. There are other sites that can provide this service. You can use paid sites like Dropbox. Just move these away from Google. As you can see, with just some intelligent choices, you can reduce your Google surveillance footprint. And you can make this even better. Since you've already logged into Google on Chrome in my example, why not click on things that profile you incorrectly? If you're a liberal, watch conservative news and commentators. If you're a conservative, watch liberal news and commentators. Put a favorite bookmark on the Chrome browser so you will know to always click on it every day. This will now confuse the algorithm. Remember that you're doing this on the browser that's logged in. So Google's watching that. Very effective, and you can watch the slow change in behavior in the YouTube algorithm, for example, as it detects you having a particular point of view. Now, a side note here, it should be obvious that there's no way to exclude Google from your life if you're using a Chrome OS computer. That device is tied to Google without any choices on your part. So avoid this like the plague. Some even think you can load Linux on Chrome OS, but really, Linux is being run under Chrome OS, so Chrome OS is always in control. This is the operating system they're putting in every school. If you're using a normie phone, you have to make some moves to eliminate the data you send to Google in some way. If you're using a de-Google phone, then you don't need to care about the data anymore since there is no Google ID on the phone. But for others, there's a limit to what you can do to make the normie phone, iPhone or Android, safe. Just like on the computer, you can change your search engine. That's good. You can use alternate browsers where you never log into Google on that browser. You can take the same steps to substitute some other email to Gmail. You can limit watching YouTube on your phone to non-controversial topics. Yes, it probably won't affect your privacy much if you watch dog and cat videos or vlogs on people's personal life. Entertainment stuff is okay. Just avoid doing things that profile you by a belief system, like watching news channels and clearly politically sided channels. Do that on a computer or a de-Googled phone. That'll make you really free. Hopefully, these strategies make it clear that we are reacting to the problem of collecting the data plus identity. So depending on the device, we try to solve it by obfuscating the identity Or if we have no ability to control the identity side, then we make an effort to change the data side. If you're on a standard normie device, especially on mobile, you have to assume you're being watched and profiled. You have to assume that the information you receive on that device is never complete. There's always something being hidden. You have to assume that whatever is projected as the most trending idea is likely artificially promoted. But the most important thing to understand is that until you make moves to protect yourself, you have to assume that you are not completely free. That someone, big tech, is pushing their agenda at you all the time, and that you belong to many cohorts, each cohort being an idea, and you're mapped to a precise location on a map. One more point that I need to make clear. Though Google likely knows your real name and address from your credit card information on the Google Play Store, identity does not mean that. It just means you are addressable on the internet. Activities can be attributed to your Google ID. It is not necessary to know your full name to influence you. I mentioned several products in this video from my company. One is the Brax 2 privacy phone, which is likely the safest way out of the Google tracking problem on mobile. Most popular apps work on it with the exception of any Google app and apps that require payment. You can still use the browser on apps that don't function, so it is quite functional for daily use. I also mentioned my Brax Mail email service, which eliminates Google from identifying you since this email emits no metadata. And I also offer a VPN service, Bytes VPN. All these are on my app BraxMe. The link is in the description. Just sign up on the app and visit the store. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.